The clock on Jackson Morrison's nightstand read 5:47 a.m. When his eyes opened without alarm, habit carved from 40 years of military discipline and motorcycle club life, dawn crept through gaps in the blinds of his modest riverside bungalow, casting pale bands across walls that held more ghosts than decoration. He swung legs over the mattress edge, joints protesting with the familiar ache of 62 years lived hard, and sat motionless for 30 seconds, performing the ritual that had sustained him through 2 decades of hollow mornings. The photograph rested where it always did, angled on the dresser to catch first light. Jennifer's smile frozen at 38, Tommy grinning in Little League uniform at age 8. The three of them captured at a moment when Jackson believed the universe owed him nothing because he already possessed everything worth having. The drunk driver who obliterated that certainty 20 years ago had served 18 months, walked free, and probably never thought about the Morrison family he'd erased from existence. Jackson thought about them every single day. He stood, vertebrae popping in sequence down his spine, and moved to the closet where Tommy's marine dress blues hung in dry cleaner plastic, never worn because the boy died 3 weeks before his scheduled enlistment. Jackson's Purple Heart sat in a box on the shelf above, earned in Da Nang in 1969 when a Viet Cong grenade turned his left leg into hamburger and killed 2 men standing close enough to share cigarettes. The medal meant nothing. Tommy's unused uniform meant everything. Coffee brewing, he stepped onto the back porch and surveyed a yard that Jennifer had once filled with roses and ambition. Now it hosted weeds and a single Harley-Davidson under a weathered tarp, the bike he rode when solitude felt less like comfort and more like penance. Riverside stretched out beyond his fence line, California sun already baking moisture from air that would hit 95 by noon. September heat lingered stubborn, refusing autumn's arrival. His phone vibrated against the kitchen counter. Cole Martinez, the club's vice president and closest thing Jackson had to a confidant, his name glowing on the screen. Jackson picked up without greeting. The voice on the other end carried tension underneath its casual tone. Church meeting, 10 o'clock. We got trouble brewing. Castellano, among other things. You should see what Razor pulled from his contacts downtown. Jackson checked his watch, calculated time needed for shower, breakfast, the 30-minute ride to the clubhouse. I'll be there at 9:30. Coffee ready? Rose is bringing a whole setup. Says we'll need it. The line went dead. Jackson set the phone down and stared at his reflection in the microwave's black screen, seeing a man whose beard had gone more gray than brown, whose face carried lines that mapped every regret and rage he'd swallowed rather than expressed. 62 years old. How much time left? And for what purpose? He dressed in jeans worn soft from 1,000 rides, boots that had kicked indoors and walked through blood, a black t-shirt that stretched across to the chest, still broad despite age's erosion. The leather cut went on last, Hell's Angels Riverside chapter patches declaring allegiance to the only family he had left. Death head grinning on his back, wings spread wide, colors that men respected or feared depending on which side of civilization's arbitrary line they occupied. The ride to the clubhouse stripped away the morning's melancholy, with wind and engine roar, Harley growling beneath him like a loyal beast that had carried him through 4 decades of chaos. Riverside streets passed in familiar sequence, neighborhoods transitioning from working-class comfort to industrial neglect to the commercial strip where the Angels had claimed territory since 1980. The clubhouse sat on a corner lot, single-story brick building that had survived 3 ownership disputes, 2 city council attempts at rezoning, and 1 arson attempt by rivals who learned quickly that Hell's Angels didn't forgive or forget. Jackson pulled into the lot at 9:28, finding 5 bikes already parked in formation. Inside, the scent of fresh coffee fought losing battle against decades of cigarette smoke, beer, and leather. The main room held a bar, pool table, walls plastered with photographs of members living and dead, runs completed, battles won. 12 men waited in the chapel, the private room where club business got conducted behind a door that locked and a code that demanded absolute honesty among brothers. Cole stood when Jackson entered, 38 years old and carrying himself with the controlled intensity of someone who'd seen combat and couldn't quite shake its rhythms. Iraq War veteran, Army Ranger, Dishonorably discharged after beating a superior officer who'd covered up friendly fire deaths to protect his career. The Angels had given Cole purpose when civilian life offered only rage and dead ends. Next to him, Razor Wilson sat lean and weathered at 60, Vietnam tunnel rat who still woke screaming some nights from dreams of crawling through Viet Cong underground networks with a pistol and a flashlight, knowing each turn might lead to bullets or bayonets in the dark. Ace Thompson, 61, Navy corpsman, who'd held together more dying Marines than he could count. Marcus Young, 28, youngest member, Afghanistan veteran carrying shrapnel in his back and guilt about the IED that killed his entire squad. T-Bone, Marcus's best friend, also 28, also marked by Helmand Province. The others filled out the circle. All military veterans, all men who'd found brotherhood in the club when the world outside wanted them to quietly disappear into landscaping jobs and therapy sessions that treated warrior experience like pathology needing cure. Jackson took his seat at the table's head. The gavel rested within reach, symbol of authority he'd carried for 12 years as president. Sometimes that responsibility felt like honor. Mostly it felt like weight. Let's get started. His voice carried command without volume. Cole, what have we got? Cole spread papers across scarred wood, bank statements, property records, surveillance photographs. Castellano's making moves. 3 members had break-ins last week. Nothing stolen, just warnings. Doors kicked in, personal items moved around, message delivered. Jackson studied the photos. Victor Castellano, 46 years old, CEO of Castellano Development Group, standing in tailored suits at ribbon cuttings and charity galas, the picture of legitimate success. But Jackson remembered Victor Castle, 26 years old, Marine Corps sergeant awaiting court-martial for embezzling unit funds and cowardice under fire during a Beirut deployment. Jackson had testified at that trial, told the truth about how Castle had stolen money meant for equipment and then frozen during combat, leaving other men to cover his position while he cowered behind a wall. Dishonorable discharge, 2 years at Leavenworth, a permanent stain that Victor had spent 2 decades trying to erase through wealth and reinvention. How much is he offering now? Jackson kept his tone neutral. $3 million for the property. Up from 2.5 last month. Razor leaned forward, scar tissue from an old knife fight pulling his mouth into permanent half-snarl. We keep saying no, he keeps escalating. Man doesn't understand the concept. Jackson tapped the photograph. He understands. He just doesn't care. This is personal for him, not business. Because you testified? T-Bone asked. Because his father killed himself on this land. Jackson let that settle. Victor's old man was Vietnam vet, did 3 tours, came home with PTSD before anyone called it that. Couldn't hold a job, couldn't hold his family together, couldn't hold on to sanity. Put a pistol in his mouth right where our back lot sits now, 1975. Victor was 18, found the body. Silence held the room. Every man present understood how war broke people. How the dead sometimes stayed more alive than the living. Cole's jaw worked. So this is about erasing that memory, building something on top of his father's blood, and getting revenge on me for speaking truth at his court-martial. 2 birds, 1 property deal. Jackson leaned back, chair creaking. What else do we know? He's hired outside help. Cole produced another photograph, this one grainy surveillance footage. Derek Kane, 30 years old, ex-Army washout, works as mercenary for whoever pays. Low-level enforcer, muscle for hire. Castellanos brought him in along with possible others. Intel says he's planning something bigger than break-ins. The room's temperature seemed to drop. Planning something bigger meant violence beyond intimidation, meant the line between property dispute and war was about to dissolve. Jackson looked at each face around the table, reading the same question in different expressions. How far would they go? How much blood were they willing to spill over a piece of land that held history and pride but no strategic value beyond symbolism? We vote. Jackson's hand moved to the gavel. Proposal on the table. Castellano wants our property. We can sell, take the money, relocate, avoid whatever he's planning. Or we hold the line, defend what's ours, accept the consequences. Show of hands for selling. No hands rose. Jackson counted to 10, giving anyone who needed time to reconsider the space to do so. Still nothing. Show of hands for holding. 12 hands lifted in unison. The decision made, Jackson brought the gavel down once, the sound sharp and final. We hold. Anyone comes at us, we respond proportional and appropriate. No first strikes, but we don't roll over. Understood? Agreement rumbled through the room. Cole gathered his papers, but Jackson raised a hand. One more thing. We protect civilians. Whatever Castellano brings, we keep it away from people who didn't sign up for this life. That's non-negotiable. The meeting dissolved into smaller conversations, men discussing security rotations and defensive measures with the practiced ease of those who'd planned operations in far more hostile environments. Jackson stood alone at the window, watching traffic pass on the street beyond, wondering how many of these men would still be alive in 6 months if Castellano truly escalated, wondering if his pride was worth their blood. Rosa Delgado arrived at 10:30 carrying boxes that smelled like salvation. 64 years old, Marine Corps widow whose husband had died in the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing. She'd run the diner 2 blocks away for 30 years and served as the club's unofficial intelligence officer. Her network of waitresses and regulars feeding information about everything happening in Riverside's underbelly. She set breakfast burritos on the bar with the efficiency of someone who'd fed warriors before battle more times than she could count. You boys look too serious. Her voice carried authority that made grown men straighten spines. Whatever you're planning, do it smart, not angry. Jackson accepted a burrito, bit into eggs and chorizo that tasted like the childhood he'd left behind when he enlisted at 18. Just preparing for possibilities. Possibilities named Castellano. Rosa's dark eyes held his. That man's poison. Always has been. You be careful how you handle poison, Jackson. It spreads easier than you think. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak around the knot of gratitude and grief that formed whenever Rosa showed maternal concern. She'd buried one warrior already and watched hundreds more struggle through the aftermath of combat. Her compassion came without illusion, which made it precious. The club dispersed by noon, members heading to pieces or responsibilities, or simply rides that cleared heads before night brought fresh troubles. Jackson stayed behind, walking the property line, assessing vulnerabilities with tactical eye that still functioned despite decades of civilian life softening its edges. The back lot where Victor's father had died was just gravel and weeds now, unremarkable except for the ghost it hosted. Jackson wondered if Victor saw his father's face in nightmares the way Jackson saw Tommy's, if the man's wealth and success had bought him any peace or just better decorated isolation. His phone rang at 2:15. Cole again, voice tight. You need to see something. Oakmont Park, West Side, bring whoever's close. What happened? Nothing yet, but I got a feeling. Trust me on this. Jackson trusted Cole's instincts the way he'd once trusted point men in Vietnam who could smell ambush before it sprang. He made calls, pulled together Marcus and T-Bone, who'd been installing security cameras at the clubhouse. Razor, who lived close enough to reach the park in 5 minutes. Ace and 2 others joined as they converged on Oakmont, 6 Harleys rolling through afternoon heat that shimmered off pavement. The park sat in a neighborhood that straddled the line between working-class stability and slow economic decay, playground equipment showing rust, grass brown from drought and neglect. Families scattered across picnic areas, children's laughter piercing the engine rumble as the Angels pulled into the adjacent parking lot. Jackson killed his bike and surveyed the scene, looking for whatever had triggered Cole's alarm. Nothing obvious presented itself. Young mothers watching toddlers, teenagers playing basketball on cracked asphalt courts, old men feeding pigeons while pretending their lives had meaning beyond killing time until death arrived. Just another Wednesday afternoon in Riverside. Then Jackson's eyes found her. Woman on a bench, late 20s, staring at a phone with the expression of someone receiving exclusively bad news. Dark hair pulled back, clothes clean but worn, purse that had seen better days resting at her feet. She looked up periodically to check on a little girl playing on the monkey bars. Child maybe 5 years old with curls that bounced as she navigated the equipment in sneakers 2 sizes too large. Something about the woman's posture triggered recognition in Jackson's chest, the particular slump of shoulders that came from carrying too much weight for too long without help. He'd seen that posture on Jennifer's face toward the end, when medical bills and Tommy's special needs had threatened to drown them before the drunk driver finished the job. He'd worn it himself in the months after their deaths, when getting out of bed felt like scaling Everest. The woman was drowning. Jackson could see it from 50 feet away. Cole materialized at his elbow, following Jackson's sightline. Her? What about her? Daughter was playing here yesterday when I rolled through. Overhead, the mom on her phone arguing with landlord about eviction. 14 days to vacate or sheriff comes with padlock and dumpster. A lot of people struggling. Jackson kept his voice neutral, fighting the pull of empathy that wanted to make someone else's crisis his problem. Yeah, but something about her felt off. Wrong kind of desperate. Cole paused. Then I noticed him. Jackson tracked Cole's subtle head tilt toward a cluster of eucalyptus trees at the parking lot's edge. Man in his late 20s, early 30s, black t-shirt and jeans, crouched beside Jackson's bike, with what looked like wire cutters in hand. The man's head swiveled, constant surveillance, checking angles, watching for witnesses while his hands worked at something near the front wheel. Every nerve in Jackson's body lit simultaneously. He'd seen men place IEDs in Iraq during his post-Vietnam contract security work, seen sappers wire explosives in Nam, knew the particular body language of someone committing sabotage while pretending innocence. The man moved to the next bike in line, Razor's custom chopper, repeating whatever action he'd just performed. Jackson's hand shot out, gripping Cole's arm hard enough to leave marks. Get everyone, quiet, circle him before he runs. Cole's eyes went wide as an understanding hit. He turned, moving with deliberate casualness toward Marcus and T-Bone, who stood comparing phone screens 20 feet away. Razor leaned against the park fence, smoking, close enough to reach in seconds. Ace talked with another member near the bikes, oblivious to danger. The saboteur finished with the second bike, started toward a third. Jackson calculated angles, distances, odds of catching him versus odds he'd vanish into surrounding streets if spooked. He took a step forward, then another, closing distance while trying to appear like he was just stretching legs after a ride. The man's head snapped up, eyes meeting Jackson's. Recognition flashed, calculation following immediately. He bolted. Jackson's shout cut across playground noise. Stop him! Everything happened in compressed seconds. The saboteur sprinted toward the street where a gray Nissan Altima sat idling with driver behind the wheel. Marcus and T-Bone reacted on combat instinct, moving to intercept. The woman on the bench jerked her head up, confusion crossing her features. The little girl on the monkey bars froze mid-swing. Then the child did something that would change everything. She jumped down from the bars and ran, not away from the chaos, but directly toward it, towards 6 large men in leather cuts, who society had taught her to fear. Her small voice carried across the parking lot with startling clarity. Don't start your bikes! Don't start your bikes! Jackson stopped as if she'd fired a weapon. The child ran straight to him, pointing at the fleeing saboteur, then at the motorcycles. Small face urgent with knowledge that children shouldn't possess. Bad man, he's cutting them! The woman, the mother, sprinted after her daughter, terror painted across features. Maya, get back here! She reached them, grabbing the child's shoulders, words tumbling out in panicked apology. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... Jackson held up one hand, silencing her, his entire focus on the child. He dropped to one knee, bringing himself to her eye level the way he'd done with Tommy 1,000 times. What did you see, sweetheart? The girl, Maya, pointed again. That man. He was doing bad things to your motorcycles, cutting them with a tool. Mama always says to tell the truth about bad things. Jackson's blood temperature dropped 20 degrees. He looked up at Cole, who'd already moved to the bikes, kneeling beside the first one, Jackson's Harley. Cole's face went pale. Brake lines, cut clean through, 2, maybe 3 bikes. Cole's voice carried professional assessment, stripped of emotion. Highway speed, these would have failed completely. Multiple crashes, multiple deaths. The parking lot tilted. Jackson's hearing narrowed to a tunnel. Heartbeat loud in his ears. Someone had tried to murder them. Would have succeeded if not for a 5-year-old child who'd been brave enough to warn strangers her mother probably taught her to avoid. He forced his attention back to Maya, seeing her properly for the first time. Worn sneakers, too big, clean clothes that had been mended multiple times. Face that radiated intelligence and courage in equal measure. Behind her, the mother stood frozen, one hand over her mouth, the other clutching her daughter like a lifeline. "What's your name?" Jackson kept his voice gentle despite rage building in his chest. "Maya Walsh." Walsh. The name triggered something. "Your father military?" Confusion crossed the mother's face, then understanding. "Yes, Marines. He died in Afghanistan, 2008. Jackson straightened slowly, hand moving to his heart in the gesture that came automatic when meeting Gold Star families. "Semper Fi. Your dad raised you right." The woman's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Jackson saw strength there, pride wrapped in exhaustion, the particular dignity of someone who'd suffered loss and kept moving because stopping meant surrendering. Cole appeared at Jackson's shoulder. Derek Kane made it to the Altima, plates traced to rental company. Long gone by now. Derek Kane, Jackson tasted the name. Castellano's mercenary. Looks that way, which means this wasn't random vandalism. This was a hit. Jackson turned back to the woman, Emma, though he didn't know her name yet. "Ma'am, I need you to understand something. The man your daughter saw, he was hired to kill us. Would have succeeded if she hadn't spoken up. That makes her the bravest person in this park." Maya looked up at him with eyes too old for her face. "Are you going to be okay?" The question hit Jackson like shrapnel. How many years since someone had asked if he'd be okay? How long since anyone cared about the answer? "Yes, little one. Because of you, we're all going to be fine." Razor joined them, jaw tight with the controlled fury of someone calculating revenge. "We calling Sullivan?" "Yeah, get him here." Jackson focused on Emma again. "Riverside PD will want statements from both of you. Detective Sullivan's good people, ex-military. He'll keep this professional." Emma nodded, but Jackson saw the tremor in her hands. This woman lived on the edge already, and now he dragged her into something that could tip her over into free fall. Cole leaned close, voice low. "The guy who did this saw them. He knows there were witnesses." "I know." Jackson's mind raced through implications. Castellano wouldn't leave loose ends. Anyone who could testify about the sabotage became liability, target, problem to be eliminated. Emma and Maya had just painted marks on their backs by doing the right thing. Emma must have read something in his expression because color drained from her face. "We're in danger?" "Potentially." Jackson wouldn't lie to her. "The man who hired the saboteur, he's got resources and no conscience. Right now, you're witnesses to attempted murder. That makes you complications he might want to remove." "Oh, God." Her hand tightened on Maya's shoulder. I can't, we have nowhere." She stopped, realizing she was revealing vulnerabilities to strangers. But Jackson already understood. 14 days to eviction, no family support based on her isolation. Single mother with a child drowning in a system that punished poverty like moral failure. He made a decision that would alter the trajectory of multiple lives. "You're under our protection now. Hell's Angels don't let civilians get hurt because they helped us. That's the code." "I can't accept that. I don't even know you." Emma's pride warred with desperation. "Your father would have done the same. If roles were reversed, if it was his daughter in danger, my brothers would have protected her. That's how this works." Jackson pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Rosa. She runs a diner 2 blocks from here. Best food in Riverside and safe. We'll get statements handled, get you fed, figure out next steps. No arguments." Emma opened her mouth to protest, then looked down at Maya, who was watching the exchange with the grave attention of children who'd learned in young that adult decisions shape their entire world. Whatever Emma saw in her daughter's face made resistance crumble. "Just for a little while," her voice barely carried, "until the police thing is done." "Just for a little while," Jackson echoed, knowing already it was a lie neither of them believed. Sullivan arrived within 20 minutes, 54 years old, and carrying himself with the bearing of someone who'd served in uniform before trading it for a badge. Gulf War veteran, 2 tours. He'd worked with the Angels enough to understand they operated by a code that sometimes aligned with law and sometimes ran parallel to it. He took statements with professional efficiency, photographed the cut break lines, documented everything with the thoroughness of someone building a case he intended to prosecute. When he'd finished with Emya and Maya, Sullivan pulled Jackson aside. Derek Kane. We've got history on him. Ex-Army, dishonorably discharged for stealing weapons to sell on black market. Works as hired muscle now, mostly for people trying to keep their own hands clean. Like Victor Castellano. Sullivan's eyes narrowed. You got evidence tying Castellano to this? Common sense and pattern recognition. Man's been trying to buy our property for 6 months. We keep refusing, things keep escalating. Break-ins last week, attempted murder today. Math isn't complicated. Math that won't hold up in court without proof. Sullivan sighed. I'll bring Kane in for questioning, but unless he flips on who hired him, or we find paper trail connecting him to Castellano, charges won't stick. So the man who tried to kill us walks free. I didn't say that. I said legal options are limited. Sullivan's expression shifted, becoming something harder. What you do outside legal channels, that's between you and your conscience, long as civilians don't get caught in crossfire. Jackson nodded, understanding the message. Sullivan would look the other way if justice came through extra-legal means, but innocence had to stay protected. The detective turned to leave, then paused. That little girl who warned you, she's something special. Make sure nothing happens to her. That's the plan. Rosa's diner occupied a corner lot that had probably been elegant in 1950, but now wore decades like comfortable jeans, faded and creased, but perfectly broken in. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floor, jukebox in the corner that still played if you fed it quarters. Photographs covered the walls, military units from Vietnam through Iraq, Marines and Army and Navy all represented. Rosa's husband smiled from a frame above the register. Young and proud in dress blues that he'd died wearing when Hezbollah drove a truck bomb into the Beirut barracks. The diner went silent when 6 bikers walked in, followed by a young woman and small child. The handful of other customers, elderly couple nursing coffee, construction workers on late lunch, teenager doing homework in a corner booth, all tracked the movement with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. Then Rosa emerged from the kitchen, steel gray hair pulled into a bun, apron splattered with evidence of serious cooking, and her face split into a smile that transformed the room's tension into something approaching warmth. Miss Maya, she addressed the child directly, ignoring all protocol and adult expectation. Any friend of these gentlemen is a friend of mine. I'm Rosa, and this is my place. What can I get you, honey? Maya glanced up at Emma for permission, then said shyly, chocolate milkshake? Coming right up. And for you, Mama? Rosa's eyes took in Emma's worn clothes, the exhaustion carved into her young face, the pride fighting to stay upright under crushing weight. Just coffee, please. Black. Rosa's expression said she saw through that lie immediately. You need more than coffee. 2 burgers, fries, milkshake for the little one, coffee for you, and I'm bringing pane after whether you want it or not. Before Emma could protest, Rosa had turned to the kitchen, already calling out orders. Jackson guided them to a booth in the back corner, away from windows, instinct placing them where defensive positions could be maintained. Cole took the next booth over with T-Bone, creating perimeter. Marcus and Razor positioned themselves near the entrance. To casual observer, it might have looked random. To anyone trained in security, it was clearly protective formation. Emma noticed. Is all this really necessary? Until we know Castellano's next move, we assume worst case. Jackson slid into the booth across from her. That means visible presence, deterrent force, message that you're not unprotected. I didn't ask for any of this. Your daughter saved our lives. You don't get to choose consequences of doing right thing. Jackson studied her face, noting intelligence behind the exhaustion. What's your name? Emma Walsh. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup Rosa had materialized with supernatural speed. And you are? Jackson Morrison. Friends call me Bear. Because you're large and terrifying? A ghost of humor flickered across her features. Because I'm old and grumpy and hibernate when possible. Jackson found himself almost smiling. Maya said her grandfather was Marine. Your father? Staff Sergeant David Walsh, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, killed by IED in Helmand Province, 2008. Emma recited the information like reading from a memorial card she'd memorized. I was 21. Maya never met him. Jackson's chest constricted. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos he kept for moments like this, found the one he needed. A group of Marines standing at a memorial service, helmets on rifles, boots arranged in precise formation. Afghanistan, 2008. He'd been there as civilian contractor, providing security for convoys. The memorial had been for multiple casualties from a single week of fighting. 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. I attended this memorial. Jackson turned the phone so Emma could see. Might have been for your father. I don't remember all the names, but I remember honoring good men. Emma's hand trembled as she looked at the photo. Tears gathered but didn't fall. He never talked much about his deployments, just said he was doing something that mattered. He was, and he raised his daughter right, based on what Maya did today. Jackson pocketed the phone. What happened to your husband? Emma's expression hardened. Ex-husband, Kevin, disappeared 18 months ago, took our savings, left me with debt in my name and a daughter to raise alone. Haven't heard from him since. You tried to find him? For about 6 months. Then I realized I was better off with him gone. Bitterness leaked through professional composure. Some men aren't worth the energy it takes to hate them. Jackson understood that sentiment more intimately than he'd ever admit. The drunk driver who'd killed Jennifer and Tommy had served 18 months, walked free, and Jackson had spent years debating whether hunting the man down would bring peace or just add more bodies to the count. He'd chosen to let the law handle it, mostly because Jennifer's voice in his head insisted vengeance wouldn't resurrect the dead. Rosa arrived with plates piled high, burgers that looked obscene in their perfection, fries golden and crispy, Maya's milkshake tall enough to drown in. The child's eyes went wide. Can I really eat all this? She whispered to Emma. Every bite. Rosa settled a hand on Maya's shoulder. Growing girl needs her strength, especially brave girls who save people. They ate in silence that felt companionable rather than awkward, Maya attacking her burger with the single-minded focus of someone who'd been hungry more often than she'd admit, Emma picking at her food before hunger overrode pride, and she devoured it with matching intensity. Jackson watched them, memory overlaying the scene with Jennifer and Tommy at this same diner 20 years ago, the three of them sharing a meal after church when life still made sense. Cole approached the booth when they had finished. Need to talk, private. Jackson excused himself, following Cole to the front where they could speak without being overheard. Cole's expression carried the weight of bad news. Ran Derek Kane through the system, multiple priors, assault, weapons charges, but always manages to slip prosecution. Good lawyer, better connections. Even if Sullivan brings him in, he'll be out in 24 hours. So we handle it ourselves. That's one option. Other option is we go after Castellano directly, make it clear civilian casualties are unacceptable. Cole paused. But that's escalation. Once we cross that line, there's no walking it back. Jackson looked through the diner window at Emma and Maya, the child's face covered in chocolate from the milkshake, the mother's expression softening as she wiped it clean. Two people who'd stumbled into a war they hadn't chosen. Civilians who deserved protection, not because of what they could offer, but because protecting the innocent was what separated men from monsters. We don't escalate, not yet, but we make sure Emma and Maya are safe, whatever that takes. Jackson's voice carried finality. Get the safe house ready. The Canyon Crest place? Yeah, 3 bedrooms, secure, better neighborhood than wherever they're living now. Move them in tonight. Cole's eyebrows rose. You sure that's a big commitment for someone we just met? Her daughter saved our lives. Her father died serving the same flag I did. That makes this personal. Jackson met Cole's eyes. You got a problem with it? No problem. Just making sure you've thought it through. I've thought it through. Jackson returned to the booth where Emma was trying to pay Rosa for the meal, and Rosa was refusing with the immovable stubbornness of someone who'd outlasted better negotiators. He waited until Emma gave up, then slid back into his seat. We need to discuss logistics. You said 14 days to eviction. Where are you living? Emma's defenses rose immediately. Small apartment near the university. Nothing fancy, but it's ours. For 14 more days. Then what? She had no answer. The silence stretched, painful and raw. Jackson leaned forward. Club owns a safe house. 3 bedrooms, good neighborhood, fully furnished. It's empty right now. You and Maya can stay there. I can't afford no rent, no utilities, no strings. Jackson held up a hand, stopping her protest. This isn't charity, it's protection. Right now, you're witnesses to attempted murder. The man who hired Derek Kane knows that, and he's got resources to make witnesses disappear. Best way to keep you safe is to keep you somewhere he can't find easily. Emma's jaw worked. For how long? However long it takes to resolve the Castellano situation. And what does resolve mean? Legal resolution or the other kind? Jackson respected her directness. Hopefully legal. Sullivan's building a case. But if Castellano comes at us again, if he threatens you or Maya, we'll handle it our way. Which means violence. Which means proportional response to threat level. We don't start wars, Emma, but we finish them. She looked at Maya, who'd fallen asleep against the booth's vinyl, small face peaceful in exhaustion. When Emma spoke again, her voice had changed, pride giving way to pragmatism. What do you want in return? Nothing. Nobody does something for nothing. Jackson understood her suspicion. The world had taught her that kindness came with price tags, that help always demanded repayment. He pulled out his wallet, extracted a worn photograph he kept behind his driver's license. Jennifer and Tommy, the same picture from his bedroom dresser, captured at a moment of pure happiness. My wife and son, killed by drunk driver 20 years ago. Tommy was 8. Jackson set the photograph on the table between them. I wasn't there when it happened. Was on a club run, thought I had all the time in the world to be a father. I was wrong. Emma's expression softened. I'm sorry. I see Maya and I see my son. Same age, same courage, same innocence that deserves protecting. Jackson picked up the photograph, returned it to his wallet. You want to know what I want in return? I want to not fail another child. That's all. Understanding passed between them, recognition that they'd both suffered losses that carved permanent holes in their lives, that they both understood grief's particular weight. Emma nodded once. Okay, we'll stay in the safe house. But I pay my way somehow. I'm a graphic designer. I can do work for the club, design flyers or websites, or whatever you need. I won't be a charity case. Deal. Jackson extended his hand. They shook, her grip firm despite her hands being half the size of his. Rosa materialized with pie, 3 slices of apple that smelled like every good memory Jackson had of home. On the house. And Emma, you need anything? You call me. Day or night, that's not negotiable. The transition happened quickly after that. Cole and Marcus went to Emma's apartment, helped her pack essentials, while she woke Maya gently and explained they were going on an adventure. The child accepted this with the adaptability of someone who'd learned young that stability was illusion. Jackson led the convoy to Canyon Crest, Emma's beat-up Honda Civic bracketed by motorcycles, escort duty that announced to anyone watching that she was under protection. The safe house sat on a tree-lined street where lawns stayed green and houses wore fresh paint, middle-class stability that Emma probably hadn't experienced since her father was alive, and military housing provided baseline security. Jackson watched her face as they pulled into the driveway, seeing disbelief war with hope. Inside, the house offered everything Emma's apartment likely didn't. Real furniture, not second-hand items held together with hope and duct tape. Kitchen with actual counter space. Bedrooms with doors that locked. Backyard with an oak tree that begged for a swing. Maya discovered the backyard immediately, running to the tree with squeals of delight. Mama, can we plant flowers? We'll see, baby. Emma's voice carried the careful neutrality of someone afraid to commit to anything permanent. Jackson showed her the master bedroom, bathroom stocked with supplies Rosa had dropped off earlier, closets empty and waiting. This is yours. Maya can have either of the other rooms. We'll have someone here rotating watches, guest room or living room couch. You won't be alone. Who? Tonight, Razor's taking first watch. Tomorrow, probably Marcus or T-Bone. We'll rotate so you get familiar with everyone, but there'll always be someone here until the threat is neutralized. Emma sank onto the bed, hands gripping the comforter like it might dissolve. This is too much. This is keeping you alive. Jackson moved to the window, checking sight lines out of habit. Get settled. Rest if you can. Tomorrow we figure out next steps. He left her there, finding Razor already positioned in the guest room with a clear view of the front door and street beyond. Former tunnel rat, Razor had instincts that made him perfect for close protection work. She's fragile. Razor's assessment carried no judgment. But there's steel underneath. She'll hold. She's a Marine's daughter. Steel's in the DNA. Jackson clapped his shoulder. Anyone comes at this house, you call me first, shoot second, ask questions, never. Roger that. The ride back to the clubhouse took Jackson through darkening streets, Riverside transforming from day commerce to night economy, bars opening, neon flickering to life, people emerging who preferred shadows to sunlight. His phone rang as he pulled into the lot. Unknown number. He answered anyway. Morrison? The voice on the other end carried the particular smoothness of someone who'd learned to disguise threat in politeness. This is Victor Castellano. Jackson's hand tightened on the phone. You got balls calling me directly. I got balls putting $2 million on the table for property. That's not worth half that. But you keep refusing. Why? Because it's not for sale. Not to you, not to anyone. Everything's for sale, Jackson. It's just a matter of price. Castellano's tone shifted, losing pretense. That little incident at Oakmont Park today, that was unfortunate. Miscommunication with an employee who took initiative without authorization. You're admitting you hired Derek Kane? I'm saying if someone matching that description was anywhere near your motorcycles, it was without my knowledge or approval. But the fact remains there were witnesses, civilian witnesses, woman and a child, I'm told. Ice spread through Jackson's veins. You threatening them? I'm observing that civilians sometimes get hurt when they involve themselves in matters beyond their understanding. Tragic, really. Preventable if the adults in the room made smarter choices. Like selling you property. Like accepting generous offer that would solve everyone's problems. $3 million, Jackson. You buy new clubhouse, I develop the land, everyone wins. And those civilian witnesses, they stop being relevant to anyone's interests. Jackson's vision narrowed to a red point. You touch that woman or her daughter, and there won't be enough money in California to save you from what comes next. Threats, how predictable. Castellano's laugh carried genuine amusement. You're old, Jackson. You and your brothers, you're dinosaurs playing at being relevant. This city's moving forward. You can move with it or get buried under it. Choice is yours. The line went dead. Jackson sat on his bike in the parking lot, engine cooling with metal ticks, rage burning through his chest like napalm. Castellano had just declared war, not with soldiers or weapons, but with the cruelest tactic possible, targeting innocents to create leverage. Jackson's phone buzzed. Text from Emma. We're settled in. Thank you doesn't seem like enough, but thank you. He typed back. Keep the doors locked. Razor's there if you need anything. Sleep if you can. Her response came quickly. You think he'll come after us? Jackson debated lying, decided Emma deserved truth. I think he's going to try, but he'll have to go through all of us first, and we don't lose. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Maya asked if you were her guardian angel. I didn't know how to answer. Jackson stared at the message, emotion clawing at his throat. When had anyone last called him angelic? When had his presence brought comfort instead of fear? Tell her I'm just a tough, old Marine who keeps his promises, and I promise to keep her safe. She'll like that answer. Good night, Jackson. Good night, Emma. He sat in the darkness for another 10 minutes, processing the day's violent pivot from routine mourning to life and death stakes. 24 hours ago, his biggest concern had been making it to 63 without his body completely betraying him. Now he was responsible for protecting a woman and child from a man with unlimited resources and no conscience. But as Jackson finally started his bike and headed home through streets that held 40 years of memories, both beautiful and terrible, He realized something that made the weight feel less crushing. For the first time since Tommy's death, he had a purpose beyond just existing. He had someone to protect, someone whose life held value and potential in all the promise that had been stolen from his son. Maya Walsh had saved his life today, not from death, but from the slow suicide of purposeless survival. And Jackson would spend however many days remained to him, making sure she got the chance to grow up safe, loved, and brave enough to keep warning strangers about bad men doing bad things. That was a legacy worth dying for, and if necessary, worth killing for. 3 days passed in uneasy calm that felt more like held breath than genuine peace. Emma navigated the safe house with careful gratitude, treating each comfort like something that might be revoked without warning. Maya adapted with child resilience, claiming the smaller bedroom as her kingdom and filling it with drawings that depicted motorcycles and men with beards alongside flowers and sunshine. Jackson visited daily, ostensibly checking security, but really needing to confirm they remained whole and unharmed. His presence anchoring something in his chest that had drifted untethered for 2 decades. The rotation worked smoothly. Razor took nights, hyper-vigilant from decades of sleeping light in hostile territory. Marcus handled mornings, his young energy matching Maya's as she chattered through breakfast about school and friends and whether motorcycles could fly if they went fast enough. T-Bone covered afternoons, teaching Emma basic security awareness without making her feel like prisoner in her temporary sanctuary. Cole stopped by evenings, discussing next steps with Jackson, while Emma pretended not to eavesdrop from the kitchen where she was learning Rosa's enchilada recipe. On the fourth morning, Jackson's phone shattered the illusion of normalcy. Cole's voice carried tension that bypassed pleasantries. "We got him, Derek Kane. Picked him up at a motel in San Bernardino. Razor's boys convinced him conversation was in his best interest. He talking? Like a revival preacher. You need to hear this. Clubhouse. 1 hour. Jackson found Emma in the backyard watching Maya chase butterflies through grass that needed mowing. Mother's vigilance, never quite relaxing, even in supposed safety. I need to handle club business. Marcus will be here in 15 minutes. Emma turned, reading something in his expression. You found the man who tried to kill you. Not a question, Jackson nodded. Found him. Now we find out who sent him. Be careful. The words came automatic, reflexive concern that struck Jackson as intimate despite their brief acquaintance. Men who hire killers don't stop at one attempt. That's why I'm being careful. He wanted to say more, wanted to explain that her concern mattered in ways he couldn't articulate, but Maya was running toward them with a flower clutched in small fist, and the moment dissolved into child joy. The clubhouse chapel held different energy when Jackson arrived. Derek Kane sat cable-tied to a chair in the center of the room, face showing evidence of persuasion that had stopped short of permanent damage. Professional roughing, enough to communicate seriousness without crossing into torture. The man's eyes tracked Jackson's entrance with calculation that suggested he was already bargaining internally, deciding what information bought what mercy. Jackson took his seat, letting silence build pressure. Around the table, 8 members waited with the patient menace of men who'd inflicted necessary violence and would do so again without hesitation. Cole stood behind Derek close enough that the younger man could feel breath on his neck. Derek Kane. Jackson's voice carried no inflection. Dishonorably discharged from the Army for weapons theft. Multiple assault charges. Always walking because you've got expensive lawyers and selective memory. Now you're cutting brake lines on motorcycles in public parks. Ambitious career trajectory. I want a lawyer. Derek's voice cracked slightly, bravado failing under scrutiny. This isn't that kind of conversation. You're not under arrest. You are not getting Miranda rights. You're sitting in a room with men whose deaths you attempted, and the only thing determining whether you leave here in ambulance or body bag is how cooperative you become in the next 5 minutes. Derek's Adam's apple bobbed. I didn't know you specifically. Just a job. Who hired you? Hesitation. Jackson nodded to Cole, who produced a photograph from his pocket and held it in front of Derek's face. The image showed Maya on the playground, time-stamped from yesterday, telephoto lens suggesting surveillance from distance. That's a 5-year-old girl who witnessed your sabotage. Cute kid, right? Brave, too. Jackson leaned forward. Now imagine what kind of man sends someone to photograph children. Imagine what he's planning for witnesses who can testify against him. Derek's color drained. Jesus Christ, he never said anything about kids. He who? Castellano, Victor Castellano. The name spilled out with relief of confession. Hired me 3 weeks ago. First job was just surveillance. Document your routines, security gaps. Second job was the break-ins, send a message. Third job was supposed to be final. Make it look like mechanical failure, accidents happen. How much? 10 grand, 5 up front, 5 on completion. Jackson absorbed this. $10,000 to murder 6 men. The casual economics of violence. What else did he say? That you were stubborn assholes standing in the way of legitimate development. That once you were gone, he could acquire the property through probate or foreclosure or whatever legal mechanism applied. Clean. No direct connection to him. Derek's words accelerated, desperate to prove cooperation. He mentioned witnesses after I called him from the park. Said they complicated things, but he'd handle it. I didn't ask what that meant. But you can guess. Silence confirmed understanding. Derek knew exactly what handling witnesses entailed. Cole circled the chair. Predator energy radiating. Where's Castellano now? Office downtown, probably. Castellano Development Group. 7th floor of the Franklin building. But he's got security, cameras, lawyers on speed dial. You can't just walk in there. We're not planning to. Jackson stood, decision crystallizing. Sullivan's going to want this statement. You're going to give it, full confession, names and dollar amounts in every detail. In exchange, we don't leave you in a ditch. That's the deal. Derek nodded frantically. Yeah, okay, whatever you need. One more thing. Who else is on his payroll? Any other contractors, muscle specialists? The hesitation returned, longer this time. Derek's eyes shifted, internal calculation visible. There might be someone. Castellano mentioned bringing in professional help if the first attempt failed. Didn't give a name, but said this guy was expensive and specialized in, quote, permanent problem solving. Jackson's blood temperature dropped. Professional problem solver meant assassin, someone who made witnesses disappear permanently. When? Didn't say, just that it was contingency plan. Cole and Jackson exchanged looks that communicated volumes without words. The threat level had just escalated from local hired muscle to someone with actual killing expertise. Emma and Maya weren't just at risk, they were actively hunted. Get Sullivan here. Jackson's command sent T-Bone moving toward the door. Derek, you're about to have the most cooperative afternoon of your life. Every question Sullivan asks, you answer truthfully and completely. Any lies, any omissions, and we revisit this conversation in less pleasant environment. Clear? Crystal. Sullivan arrived within 20 minutes, bringing recording equipment and the wary professionalism of someone who'd conducted 1,000 interrogations and knew this one actually mattered. He set up in the clubhouse office, shooing angels out with the casual authority of man who'd earned their respect through years of fair dealing. Jackson waited in the main room, pacing circles that wore imaginary paths in concrete floor. Rosa appeared with sandwiches nobody had requested but everyone needed, her presence calming the room's violent energy through sheer maternal force. She cornered Jackson near the bar, keeping her voice low. You're planning something stupid. I'm planning necessary response to credible threat. Tomato, tomato. What I'm saying is don't let rage make you sloppy. That little girl needs you thinking clear, not thinking revenge. Jackson met her eyes, seeing concern that came from burying one warrior and watching hundreds more chase ghosts into early graves. I'm thinking clear. Castellano hired an assassin. That assassin's coming for Emma and Maya. Only way to stop him is to remove the man signing the checks. Legally or otherwise? Preferably legally. Sullivan's building a case with Derek's testimony, but if law moves too slow and civilians are in crosshairs, then otherwise becomes necessary. Rosa's hand found his arm, grip surprisingly strong for someone her age. Jackson Morrison, you listen to me. You've already lost one family to violence you couldn't control. Don't lose another one by becoming the violence you're trying to stop. The words hit harder than fists. Jackson nodded, not trusting voice to respond without breaking. Sullivan emerged 2 hours later with the expression of prosecutor who just won the lottery. Got him, full confession, wire transfers, text message evidence on Derek's phone. Castellano's prints are all over this. I can get warrant for his arrest by end of day. What about the assassin Derek mentioned? Nothing concrete. Castellano was careful not to put that in writing. But Derek's testimony about the conversation might be enough to add conspiracy charges. Sullivan paused. How's your witness doing? Emma Walsh? Scared but holding together. Daughter's resilient. Good. I'll need formal statements from both of them, but I can take those at the safe house, minimize exposure, keep them locked down until we've got Castellano in custody. How long? Warrant by tonight, arrest by morning if we can locate him. Man like Castellano doesn't hide, though. He thinks money makes him untouchable. Jackson walked Sullivan to his car, question burning that needed asking without audience. Off the record, how solid is this case? Sullivan leaned against the sedan, choosing words carefully. Solid enough for arrest and indictment. Trial? Depends on how expensive his lawyers are and how well they can create reasonable doubt. Derek's a criminal with credibility issues. Physical evidence is circumstantial. We can prove money changed hands, but not explicitly what it purchased. So he might walk. He might. Systems designed to protect the wealthy, and Castellano's got wealth. Sullivan's jaw tightened, which is why I'm telling you off the record that sometimes justice happens outside courtrooms. I'm not encouraging anything. I'm just observing reality. Understanding passed between two veterans who'd seen enough of the world to know that legal and just didn't always overlap. Appreciate the honesty. Appreciate you keeping civilians safe. That woman and her kid, they didn't ask for this. Nobody asked for violence. It just finds people. Sullivan drove away, leaving Jackson standing in afternoon heat that felt oppressive despite September's approach to autumn. His phone buzzed. Text from Emma. Maya wants to know if you're coming for dinner. Rosa dropped off enough food to feed an army, and apparently we're expected to share. Jackson typed back. Be there at 6. Tell Maya to save me dessert. The response came with a smiley face emoji that seemed absurdly out of place given the circumstances, but somehow made Jackson's chest feel lighter. He was walking to his bike when another vehicle pulled into the lot. This one unfamiliar. Black SUV with tinted windows, expensive enough to stand out in a neighborhood where most transportation came with 2 wheels and loud pipes. The driver's door opened. Man emerged who carried himself with military bearing that spoke of special operations background. Someone who'd operated in places where rules were suggestions and survival demanded flexibility. Late 50s, salt and pepper hair pulled into ponytail, weathered face showing old scars and older regrets. He wore Riverside Riders colors, rival club that had maintained tense truce with the Angels for 2 decades. Jackson's hand moved toward the pistol at his back, not drawing but ready. You're on the wrong side of town, Ghost. Raymond Ghost Patterson, president of the Riverside Riders, held up empty hands in gesture of peace. Came to talk, not fight. Give me 5 minutes. Talk fast. Ghost approached with careful steps that respected territorial boundaries while projecting confidence. Heard about your trouble with Castellano. Heard he hired Derek Kane to sabotage your rides. News travels fast. News involving attempted murder of half-dozen men travels at light speed in our community. Ghost stopped 10 feet away, maintaining distance that allowed conversation without threat. Thing is, Derek's one of mine, or was, low-level member who took outside contracts without clearing it with the club. That's violation of protocol. So you're here to apologize. I'm here to tell you Castellano's using my club for his personal vendetta without my knowledge or approval. That pisses me off. Ghost's expression hardened. Man's cancer. Dishonorably discharged Marine who spent 30 years pretending he's a legitimate businessman. Now he's getting people killed at unbreakable real estate dispute. Jackson studied the other president, reading sincerity beneath the careful diplomacy. Ghost had served in Vietnam, Khe Sanh specifically, one of the war's bloodiest sieges. He'd earned his nickname by surviving wounds that killed men on either side of him, appearing like Ghost in Aftermath when medics had already written him off. Why tell me this? Because 20 years ago, you testified at Victor Castle's court-martial, told truth about how he stole from his own unit and froze during combat. That testimony cost you, made enemies, but you did it anyway because it was right. Ghost's voice carried respect that transcended club rivalry. I was there, different unit, but I watched that trial, watched you choose honor over convenience. That meant something then, means something now. Jackson felt memory stirring. The court-martial had been ugly. Victor's lawyers trying to paint Jackson as jealous subordinate with axe to grind, Jennifer sitting in gallery with Tommy, while military justice ground through its process. The verdict had been guilty, discharge dishonorable, but Jackson had lost contracts and opportunities for months afterward as Victor's connections exacted subtle revenge. What's your point? My point is Castellano's not just targeting you over property. This is personal revenge for old humiliation. He wants to destroy you the way that discharge destroyed his military career. Ghost paused. And my point is, I'm pulling my club out of any involvement. Derek's expelled. Any other riders he's talked to, they're getting same message. We're not participating in rich man's vendetta. Appreciate that, but doesn't solve my immediate problem. Castellano's still out there, still hiring killers. Which brings me to second reason for this visit. Ghost's demeanor shifted, becoming something harder. Heard he might be bringing in specialist, professional. Where'd you hear that? Got contacts in certain communities. Private military contractors, former agency guys, people who do wet work for money. Word is Castellano reached out to someone with serious reputation, Chinese-American, goes by Wraith, ex-CIA, specializes in making problems disappear permanently. Jackson's stomach nodded. CIA-trained assassin meant someone with skills and resources that made Derek Kane look like amateur hour. When? Don't know, but if Wraith's involved, you probably got maybe a week before he moves. Man's patient, studies targets, waits for perfect opportunity, then strikes without warning. Why are you telling me this? Ghost met his eyes, veteran to veteran, man who understood that some bonds transcended colors and rivalry. Because I was at Khe Sanh in '68, watched Marines die protecting Vietnamese kids from NVA shelling. That meant something. Meant we weren't just killers, we were protectors. Castellano's targeting a woman and 5-year-old child to get leverage on you. That shit's on everything we fought for. Understanding crystallized. Ghost wasn't just warning about Wraith, he was offering alliance, temporary suspension of rivalry, in service of shared code that said children were off limits regardless of adult conflicts. Jackson extended his hand. Marine to Marine? Ghost gripped it firmly. Semper Fi, brother. They stood in parking lot that had hosted fights and negotiations and tense standoffs between their clubs, now transformed into neutral ground by mutual enemy and shared values. Jackson released Ghost's hand, mind already calculating implications. What are you proposing? Information sharing. My guys hear anything about Wraith's timeline or methods. I pass it along. Your guys spot anything involving my club. You let me know before assuming worst. We don't become friends, but we don't let Castellano play us against each other. And after, once this situation's resolved, we go back to respectful distance and established boundaries. But we remember we're both riding the same road, just on different bikes. Ghost pulled keys from his pocket. One more thing, that little girl who warned you, Maya Walsh, Marine's granddaughter from what I hear. Her grandfather died in Helmand Province, 2008. Ghost's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then she's got warrior blood. Make sure she grows up safe enough to pass it on. That's the plan. Ghost drove away, leaving Jackson standing amid implications that rewrote the tactical landscape. Rival club declaring neutrality, veteran networks sharing intelligence. Unified front against man who dishonored the Corps and now threatened innocence. The situation was evolving beyond simple property dispute into something that carried weight of old codes and older loyalties. His phone rang. Emma, voice tight with a controlled panic. Someone's watching the house. Black sedan, 2 men inside, parked across the street for the last hour. Marcus says it could be nothing, but it doesn't feel like nothing. Jackson was moving toward his bike before she finished speaking. Lock the doors. Get Maya into interior room with no windows. I'm 5 minutes out. Should I call the police? Marcus already did. I'm calling backup. The ride to Canyon Crest took 4 minutes of aggressive lane splitting and traffic violations that Jackson would have arrested himself for in younger, more law-abiding life. He arrived to find Marcus positioned at front window with pistol drawn, but held low, professional vigilance that came from Afghan deployment where threats materialized from civilian populations without warning. The black sedan was still parked, two figures visible through tinted windshield. Jackson parked his bike blocking the driveway, deliberate statement of presence and capability. Cole arrived 30 seconds later with T-Bone and Razor, three more bikes forming perimeter that announced protective detail in language anyone watching would understand. Sullivan's unmarked car rolled up moments after, detective reading the situation and positioning himself between angels and potential threat. The sedan's doors opened. Two men emerged, hands visible, body language suggesting they were expecting confrontation and ready for it. Not assassins, Jackson assessed immediately. Too obvious, too willing to be seen. More likely surveillance, advanced scouts confirming target location before main operation. Sullivan approached them with badge displayed, conversation happening at distance. Jackson couldn't hear but could read in body language. One man producing identification, other reaching for phone. Sullivan's posture shifting from confrontation to professional courtesy. Whatever story they were selling, detective was buying at least provisionally. Sullivan returned to where Jackson waited with barely contained violence. Private investigators. Licensed, legitimate, working for law firm that represents Castellano Development Group. They're documenting witness locations for potential civil suit. Civil suit? Apparently Castellano's planning to sue Derek Kane for unauthorized use of company resources and for defaming company reputation. These guys are gathering evidence about who knew what when. Sullivan's expression conveyed what he thought of that legal theory. It's bullshit, but it's legal bullshit. I can't move them for doing their jobs. Jackson watched the investigators watching Emma's house, calculating, documenting. They're not here for lawsuit. They're confirming targets for Wraith. Probably, but I can't arrest people for probably. Sullivan lowered his voice. What I can do is make sure patrol car swings by every hour. And what you can do is exactly what you're doing. Make it clear this house is protected. The investigators returned to their sedan, pulled away with deliberate slowness that suggested message delivered and received. Jackson waited until they disappeared before approaching the front door, where Emma stood with Maya pressed against her legs, both females radiating fear that made his chest ache. They're gone. Just lawyers being lawyers. Emma's eyes called bullshit on that assessment. They know we're here, which means he knows. He's always known. This is him reminding us that he knows, trying to create pressure. Jackson crouched to Maya's level, forcing a smile that probably looked more grimace. Hey, little hero, you okay? Maya nodded, but her small hand clutched his leather cut with grip that suggested otherwise. Are the bad men coming? The question destroyed him. 5 years old and already understanding that bad men existed, that they came for people, that safety was never guaranteed. Tommy had died before learning that lesson. Maya had learned it too young. Not while I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Maya's arms wrapped around his neck with trust that felt simultaneously precious and terrifying. Jackson held her, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, small and rapid and alive. Behind her, Emma watched with expression that mixed gratitude and grief in equal measure. That evening unfolded with forced normalcy that felt like performance for Maya's benefit. Rosa's enchiladas heated and served, conversation flowing around topics that avoided danger and death. Maya chattering about school project involving butterfly life cycle. Emma asking questions about motorcycle maintenance with genuine interest that surprised Jackson. Marcus entertaining them with stories from Afghanistan that had been sanitized of anything resembling actual trauma. After dinner, Maya demanded Jackson read bedtime story, pulling him into her room where walls displayed drawings of flowers and motorcycles in crayon-bright optimism. The book was standard fairy tale fare, princess and dragon and brave knight. Narrative formula that promised good triumphing over evil through courage and determination. Jackson's voice stumbled over words as he read, realizing that Maya saw him as the brave knight, that she'd cast him in role of protector who could slay any dragon. He couldn't let her down. Couldn't be the adult who promised safety and delivered coffins. Couldn't fail another child. Maya fell asleep mid-story, face peaceful in a way that suggested whatever nightmares might come later. For now, she felt secure. Jackson extracted himself carefully, turned off the light, left door cracked so hallway glow could reach her if she woke frightened. Emma waited in the kitchen, 2 glasses of wine poured despite neither of them being wine people. She loves you. She barely knows me. She knows enough. Knows you showed up when her whole world was scary. Knows you're keeping promises when most adults in her life have broken them. Emma sipped wine without tasting it. Her father, my father, her grandfather, all the men who were supposed to be there, they're gone. You're here. That's everything to a 5-year-old. Jackson accepted the wine, drank to give himself time to process emotions that felt too large for his chest. I had a son, Tommy. He'd be 28 now if the drunk driver hadn't killed him. Every time I look at Maya, I see what I lost. And I know that's not fair to her, making her carry my grief. But I can't help it. Maybe that's exactly why you're perfect for this. You know what it costs when we fail to protect children. You'll move heaven and earth before letting that happen again. They sat in silence that felt comfortable despite circumstances. 2 people who'd both survived losses that should have destroyed them, who'd both kept moving because stopping meant surrendering to grief's gravity. Outside, Marcus's shadow passed the window on patrol rotation. Somewhere in Riverside, Castellano was planning next move. Somewhere closer, possibly already in the city, a professional killer named Wraith was studying patterns and waiting for opportunity. But in this kitchen, for this moment, Emma and Jackson existed in a bubble of temporary peace that felt precious exactly because it was fragile. Emma broke silence first. What happens when this is over? Assuming we survive, assuming Castellano's arrested or dealt with or whatever end this reaches, what happens to us? Jackson hadn't let himself think that far ahead, superstition suggesting that planning for future tempted fate to destroy it. You stay here as long as you need, get stable, find work, build life that doesn't involve being terrified. And you? I keep being old biker who's outlived his purpose until I find new one or die trying. Emma's laugh carried no humor. You're 62, not 90, and you've got more purpose in your pinky than most men find in lifetimes. That little girl in there, she's your purpose. I'm your purpose. Whatever you build after this, we're part of it, if you'll have us. The offer hung between them, not romantic but something deeper. Family by choice rather than blood. Connection forged in crisis, but potentially lasting beyond it. Jackson wanted to accept without reservation. Wanted to promise that, yes, absolutely, they'd be his family and he'd be theirs, and they'd navigate whatever came next together. But promising felt like curse. Every time he'd promised Jennifer he'd come home safe, every time he'd promised Tommy they'd go camping next month, those promises had come back as lies that dead couldn't forgive. Let's survive first, then we'll figure out what comes after. Emma nodded, accepting the limitation without pushing. They finished wine in companionable silence. Then Emma retreated to her bedroom while Jackson took couch despite Marcus's protest that he should head home. Jackson couldn't sleep anyway, mind too active with tactical considerations and emotional complications. He lay staring at ceiling, listening to house sounds that gradually settled into night quiet. Marcus's periodic checks, Emma's door opening then closing as she checked on Maya. Somewhere around 2 a.m., his phone vibrated. Text from Ghost. Wraith confirmed in Riverside, black SUV, Nevada plates, checked into Marriott downtown under alias William Chen. Moves tomorrow, maybe day after. You're running out of time. Jackson typed back. Where's your intel from? Friend who works hotel security. Recognized Chen from old agency photos. Man's got reputation that precedes him. Appreciate the heads up. Semper Fi. Keep that little girl breathing. Jackson forwarded the information to Colin Sullivan, then lay back down with mind calculating options. Wraith would come, that was certain. Question was whether they could flip the script, turn hunted into hunters, use advanced knowledge to set trap instead of waiting for attack. Professional assassins expected fear and disorganization. They didn't expect targets who'd fought wars and understood that best defense was controlled offense. Morning brought decision. Jackson assembled Cole, Marcus, T-Bone, Razor, and Ace in the safe house living room while Emma kept Maya occupied in backyard. He laid out ghost intelligence, confirmed through Sullivan's contacts that William Chen matched Wraith's known aliases. We've got maybe 36 hours before he moves. That's advantage, small but real. He doesn't know we know he's here. Thinks we're sitting ducks waiting to be eliminated. Cole's fingers drummed table. So we hit him first. Take the fight to Marriott, remove threat before he becomes active. Too public. Hotels got cameras, witnesses, security. We'd be trading Wraith for murder charges. Jackson shook his head. Better play is to draw him out, make him come to us on ground we control. Using what for bait? Marcus asked, then realized. Oh, hell no, you're not using Emma and Maya. Not them, me. Jackson had spent hours working through this scenario. Wraith's hired to eliminate witnesses, but his real target is me. Castellano wants revenge, wants to break me before finishing me. So we give him shot. I make myself visible, vulnerable, irresistible target. Wraith takes the bait, moves on me instead of civilians. Razor's scarred face pulled into frown. You're proposing suicide mission. Wraith's professional. You're 62. I'm 62 with 7 men covering angles and Sullivan standing by to document everything. Not suicide, trap. Jackson met each pair of eyes. But I need all of you committed. This works only if coordination's perfect. They spent the next 2 hours planning operation that balanced aggression with caution, creating scenario where Jackson appeared isolated while actually surrounded by protective detail. The location was key, somewhere public enough that Wraith couldn't simply shoot from distance, confined enough that escape routes were limited, familiar enough that angels knew every angle. Rosa's diner emerged as obvious choice. Public space, multiple exits, sight lines that favored defenders over attackers, cameras that would document everything for legal purposes. And Rosa herself, who'd fed warriors before battle for 40 years and wouldn't blink at turning her diner into battlefield if it meant protecting people she claimed as family. Jackson called Rosa, explained in broad strokes what they needed. Her response was immediate. When? Tomorrow evening, 6 p.m., I'll be alone in corner booth, visible from street. Wraith makes his move, you make yourself scarce, we handle it. I'm not going anywhere. Man wants to start trouble in my place. He deals with me first. Rosa's tone brooked no argument. But Jackson, you be smart. Don't let pride make you careless. That child needs you alive more than she needs you brave. Working on both. He hung up and found Emma standing in doorway, having left Maya with Marcus in the backyard. Her expression suggested she'd heard enough to understand the shape of what was coming. You're using yourself as bait. I'm removing threat before it reaches you and Maya. By putting yourself in position to get killed. By putting myself in position to end this with minimal civilian exposure. Jackson stood, closing distance between them. Emma, I've been ready to die for 20 years. Since Jennifer and Tommy, I've just been existing, waiting for purpose or end, whichever came first. This is purpose. Protecting you and Maya, that's the first thing that's mattered since I buried my family. Emma's eyes glistened, but tears didn't fall. What if your purpose is supposed to be living, not dying? What if Maya needs you to show her that men can stay, that promises get kept, that protection doesn't always end in sacrifice? The words carved into Jackson's chest, revealing truth he'd been avoiding. Maya didn't need martyr, she needed constant presence, reliable figure who showed up day after day until she internalized that safety could be sustained, not just temporarily performed. But Wraith was coming, and unless Jackson acted first, that assassin would target Emma and Maya directly. The mathematics were brutal but clear. I'll be careful, but this ends tomorrow, one way or another. Emma nodded, resignation settling over her features. She stepped forward, rose on toes, pressed lips to Jackson's cheek in gesture that felt simultaneously intimate and platonic, gratitude mixed with grief for outcome not yet determined. Come back. Please. We need you. Jackson couldn't promise. Promising was curse. But he could nod, could let her believe he'd do everything possible to survive, could carry that belief into whatever tomorrow brought. That night, he didn't sleep on couch. Instead, he sat in chair beside Maya's bed, watching her breathe in rhythm that spoke of innocence he'd once known and lost. She stirred around midnight, eyes opening to find him there. Papa Bear? The nickname had emerged organically, child logic deciding that if he was protective and large and slightly grumpy, then obviously he was Bear. Right here, little one. I had a dream the bad men came, but you stopped them. Jackson's throat constricted. That's my job. Stopping bad men. Will you always? The question every child asked, seeking reassurance that couldn't be guaranteed. Jackson had promised Tommy they'd build treehouse together. Promised they'd go to Disneyland. Promised 1,000 futures that never arrived. He wouldn't lie to Maya. I'll always try, and trying counts for something. Maya seemed to accept this qualified promise. She reached out, small hand finding his large scarred one, holding it with grip that suggested anchor more than comfort. Mama says you lost your little boy. I'm sorry. Grief ambushed Jackson, sudden and complete. He'd talked about Tommy with therapists and brothers and Rosa, always maintaining distance that kept emotion manageable. But Maya's simple sympathy destroyed those defenses. Child empathy, piercing, where adult analysis couldn't reach. I did, long time ago. He was brave, like you. Do I remind you of him? Every day, but that's good thing. Means part of him's still here, still making difference. Maya absorbed this with seriousness beyond her years. Then I'll be extra brave for him. Jackson lifted her hand, pressed it to his chest where heart hammered against ribs. You're already brave enough. Don't push it, okay? Just be you. That's more than sufficient. She smiled, satisfied, and drifted back to sleep with hand still clasped in his. Jackson sat through the night, watching over her, memorizing her face in case tomorrow stole his chance to see it again, storing up this moment of peace before violence inevitably arrived. Dawn found him stiff and sore, but somehow lighter, as if confession to a child had granted absolution that eluded him through decades of adult processing. He extracted his hand gently, left Maya sleeping, found Emma in kitchen making coffee with movements that spoke of similar sleepless night. Today's the day. Not question, statement. Today's the day. Jackson accepted coffee, drank it black and bitter. Sullivan's got surveillance set up. Cole and the boys are positioning now. By 6 p.m., Rose's diner will be fortified better than most embassies. And you'll be sitting there waiting for Assassin to make his move. That's the plan. Emma set down her mug with careful precision. I hate this plan. For the record, I hate everything about it. Noted. Got better option? Run. Take Maya and disappear. Change names, start over, let Castellano and Wraith chase ghosts. For how long? Year? 5 years? Rest of Maya's childhood? Jackson shook his head. She deserves to grow up without constantly looking over shoulder. Only way that happens is if we end threat permanently. Or threat ends you. Then at least it ends, and you did Maya stay safe, which was always the point. They stood in kitchen that smelled of coffee and unspoken fear, two people who'd become family through crisis and now face potential dissolution through violence, neither controlled, but both accepted as inevitable. Outside, sun climbed California sky that promised heat and danger in equal measure. Somewhere in Riverside, a man named Wraith was preparing weapons and strategy, and in a diner that had fed warriors for 40 years, Rosa was setting the table for final confrontation. Jackson checked his watch. 12 hours until showdown. 12 hours to make peace with outcome, whatever it might be. The hours before 6 p.m. stretched and compressed simultaneously, time behaving like elastic under tension. Jackson spent them in methodical preparation that felt ritualistic, cleaning weapons he hoped wouldn't fire, checking gear that might save or fail him, writing letter to Maya he prayed she'd never need to read. The safe house hummed with controlled energy as angels rotated through, each man receiving assignment and executing it with professional precision born from combat experience. Cole coordinated from command position in van parked 2 blocks from Rose's diner. Surveillance feeds from 6 cameras providing overlapping coverage of every approach angle. Marcus and T-Bone occupied apartment across the street, sniper rifles positioned for long-range interdiction if situation deteriorated beyond containment. Razor waited in diner kitchen, close enough to respond within seconds if Jackson needed immediate backup. Ace drove perimeter routes, watching for suspicious vehicles or patterns that suggested Wraith's approach. Sullivan had positioned unmarked cars at 3 intersections, officers briefed on situation, and authorized to respond with force if civilians entered danger zone. The detective himself sat in booth near diner entrance, newspaper and coffee providing cover, while earpiece kept him connected to Angel Communications Network. Legal justification was thin, but Sullivan had made peace with operating in gray areas when circumstances demanded flexibility. Ghost contribution arrived at 4 p.m. via encrypted text. Wraith left hotel 30 minutes ago. Black SUV heading your direction. Passenger seat occupied. Possible spotter or backup. You've got maybe 90 minutes. Jackson forwarded information to Cole, received confirmation that all positions were locked and ready. He dressed in clean clothes, jeans, and black t-shirt under his leather cut, wanting to look presentable if this was his last day breathing. The thought didn't frighten him as much as it probably should have. 62 years had contained enough pain and loss that death felt less like enemy and more like old acquaintance finally keeping appointment. Emma found him in the garage checking his Harley's fluids with unnecessary thoroughness, displacement activity that kept hands busy while mind processed what came next. She leaned against door frame watching him work, Maya playing in the backyard under Marcus's distant supervision, child laughter drifting through afternoon heat. You look like you're going to funeral. Her voice carried observation without judgment. Maybe I am. Maybe it's Wraith's. Maybe it's mine. Either way, someone's dying today. Emma crossed distance between them, invaded personal space with deliberate intimacy, hands finding his face and forcing eye contact. Listen to me carefully, Jackson Morrison. You don't get to die. Not today, not because of us, not before Maya gets to see what kind of man you'll be when peace comes. You promised her you'd try. Trying means surviving, not martyring yourself. I'm doing what's necessary. Necessary would be letting Sullivan handle it. Necessary would be protective custody and witness relocation. This is you deciding your life matters less than ours, and I'm calling bullshit. Her eyes blazed with anger that masked terror. You want to protect us? Then stay alive. That's how you protect us. By being there tomorrow and next week and next year, showing Maya that men can be counted on. Jackson's hands covered hers, feeling warmth against his scarred palms. If I let Wraith come for you, if I put you in position where a professional killer has clear shot and something happens, I couldn't live with that. Better I take the risk than force you to. Except you're not just you anymore. You're Papa Bear. You're the first stable male figure Maya's had. You're the man I trust to keep promises when everyone else broke them. Emma's voice cracked slightly. You don't get to decide your death is acceptable collateral damage. We need you. Please understand that. The plea destroyed Jackson's careful emotional control. He pulled Emma close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Breathing in scent of shampoo and fear and desperate hope. I'll be careful. I'll come back. I promise. Promising was cursed, but some moments demanded it regardless. Maya ran into the garage at that moment, froze seeing adults embracing, processed scene with child logic that leaped to conclusions. Are you getting married? The question shattered tension into something approaching laughter. Emma released Jackson, knelt to Maya's level. No, baby. Just saying goodbye before Mr. Jackson handles some business. What kind of business? Grown-up kind, boring meetings and talking. Emma smoothed Maya's curls with maternal tenderness. He'll be back for bedtime story, won't you? Maya's eyes found Jackson's, searching for confirmation that adults sometimes withheld when truth was too frightening. He crouched beside Emma, bringing himself to child eye level. I'll be back. That's a promise, and Marines keep their promises. Always? Always when it involves brave little girls who save bikers. Maya seemed satisfied. She threw arms around Jackson's neck with unself-conscious affection that made his chest ache. Be safe, Papa Bear. You too, little one. The ride to Rosa's diner took Jackson through riverside streets that held 40 years of memories, every corner associated with moments both beautiful and terrible. He'd ridden these same roads with Jennifer on the back of his bike, laughing into wind that carried them toward futures they'd never reach. He'd driven them in pickup truck with Tommy's car seat secured, singing along to children's music that grated but brought joy. He'd navigated them alone after the funerals, numb and purposeless, wondering if the next turn might deliver oblivion. Now he rode toward confrontation that would determine whether he earned right to new memories or joined old ghosts in permanent residence. Rosa stood in diner doorway when he arrived, arms crossed, expression mixing concern with steely determination. You're early. Wanted to make sure setup was right. Jackson parked his bike in visible spot, announcement to anyone watching that Target had arrived. Inside, the diner held 3 customers who were actually angels in civilian clothes, positioned to look casual while maintaining awareness of every entrance and window. Rosa had cleared her usual evening rush with excuse about private event, disappointing regulars but keeping them safe from potential crossfire. Jackson took corner booth that offered sightlines to street while putting his back against solid wall. Rosa brought coffee without asking, set it down with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly. This is stupid, you know that, right? Sitting here like duck in shooting gallery? Duck with very good coverage. Jackson gestured subtly toward concealed positions. I'm safer here than anywhere. Safe is relative when professional killer wants you dead. Rosa slid into booth across from him, abandoning pretense of server role. Jackson, you've been running toward death for 20 years. I watched you after Jennifer and Tommy, saw you volunteer for every dangerous run, every conflict situation. Saw you hoping someone would finally give you excuse to stop existing. Is that what this is? Yeah, permission to quit? The accusation hit harder because it carried truth. No, this is me choosing to protect people who matter. Different motivation. Is it? Or are you just telling yourself that while secretly hoping Wraith's better than you, faster than you, lucky enough to end your suffering? Jackson met her eyes, seeing concern that came from decades of watching men self-destruct in ways both spectacular and mundane. Month ago, you might have been right, but Maya changed something. Emma changed something. I want to see them safe, not because I'm ready to die, but because I'm finally ready to live. And that means removing threats that prevent it. Rosa studied his face, reading sincerity beneath the layers of damage and defense. She nodded once, satisfied. Then don't get killed. That little girl's already practiced her goodnight hug for when you come back. She stood, returned to kitchen where Razor waited with weapons and readiness, leaving Jackson alone with coffee and thoughts that circled like vultures. His phone buzzed. Text from Cole. Wraith's SUV spotted 3 blocks out. 2 occupants, driver and passenger. Moving slow, surveilling area, ETA 4 minutes. Jackson typed back. All positions hold until my signal. Let him make first move. The waiting was always worst part of combat, seconds expanding into geological time, while adrenaline prepared body for violence that might or might not materialize. Jackson sipped coffee that tasted like ash, watching street through diner window, cataloging every vehicle and pedestrian for threat assessment. Black SUV rolled past slowly, tinted windows preventing clear view of occupants. But Jackson felt weight of surveillance like physical touch. The vehicle continued down the block, turned corner, disappeared. Not attacking, just confirming intelligence, making sure target was present and apparently vulnerable. Cole's voice crackled through earpiece Jackson wore. He's circling, probably looking for trap indicators, counter surveillance, anything suggesting this isn't what it appears. Let him look. He'll find civilians in regular diner operation. Nothing to suggest Angel's presence beyond my bike. Your bike's a pretty big suggestion. Yeah, but I ride here all the time. Routine behavior, not tactical setup. The SUV made 2 more passes over next 20 minutes, each circuit tightening spiral that suggested Wraith was committing to engagement. Jackson forced himself to appear relaxed, reading newspaper Sullivan had left, occasionally checking phone, performing normalcy while every nerve fired alert signals. Sullivan's voice replaced Cole's in the earpiece. SUVs parking 2 blocks east, both occupants exiting. Male, Asian, mid-40s, athletic build, carrying small bag. Second male, Caucasian, younger, similar build. Moving on foot toward your position. Jackson's pulse elevated, but he kept breathing steady, remembering lessons from Vietnam about controlling fear response. Wraith was coming. The trap was springing. Now execution would determine whether carefully laid plans survived contact with professional killer. Rosa emerged from kitchen with pie slice Jackson hadn't ordered, setting it down with deliberate care. 2 men approaching from east. You want me to lock the door? No, let them enter. Natural response is better than defensive posture. She nodded, retreated, but Jackson noticed she positioned herself near the kitchen where Razor waited. The 3 civilian-clothed angels shifted subtly, hands moving closer to concealed weapons, eyes tracking entrance while maintaining illusion of disinterest. The diner door opened. 2 men entered, Wraith immediately identifiable by the way he moved, economy of motion that spoke of serious training and significant experience. His companion was muscle, backup or spotter, less refined but dangerous in the way large men with violent skills always were. Wraith's eyes swept the diner in assessment that took perhaps 2 seconds, cataloging every person and potential threat, lingering on Jackson with recognition that confirmed target identification. Then his hand moved toward the bag he carried, motion smooth and practiced, suggesting weapon within easy reach. Jackson raised his voice just loud enough to carry. Thomas Chen, or do you prefer Wraith? The assassin froze, surprise flickering across features trained to reveal nothing. Using his name was power move, announcing that Jackson knew exactly who he faced, that intelligence had penetrated operational security Wraith assumed was intact. You're well informed. Wraith's voice carried no accent, neutral American English that could have come from anywhere. Makes this easier, you know why I'm here. Victor Castellano hired you to eliminate witnesses, woman named Emma Walsh and her 5-year-old daughter Maya, along with me, for good measure. Nothing personal, just business. When it involves killing children, it's always personal. Jackson remained seated, projecting calm while calculating distances and angles. Wraith stood 15 feet away, companion slightly behind and to the right. Kitchen was 20 feet at Jackson's back. Sullivan sat near entrance, hand presumably on weapon beneath newspaper. Question is whether you're committed to business when business gets complicated. Wraith's head tilted slightly, curiosity evident. Complicated how? Complicated like every window and rooftop in sightline of this diner holds someone ready to put rounds through you. Complicated like Sullivan over there is Riverside PD detective with arrest warrant and authorization to use lethal force if you make aggressive move. Complicated like the client who hired you is currently in custody and unlikely to pay remaining balance on your contract. The assassin's eyes flicked towards Sullivan, who lowered newspaper enough to display badge and service weapon. Wraith's companion shifted weight, nervous energy broadcasting amateur status compared to professionals' controlled stillness. You're bluffing. Am I? Jackson pulled out phone, brought up image Ghost had texted earlier. Castellano in handcuffs being perp walked into Riverside PD station. Timestamp showing 3 hours ago. Derek Kane flipped, full confession, wire transfers, text messages. Your client's looking at 25 to life for attempted murder and conspiracy, which means your contract is void, payments unlikely, and exposure is guaranteed if you proceed. Wraith studied the photo, mind clearly calculating revised risk-benefit analysis. Professional killers survived by knowing when to walk away, when engagement costs exceeded potential gains. What are you proposing? Walk out, leave Riverside, cancel contract due to client's incarceration. Nobody dies today, you stay out of prison, we all move forward. And if I refuse? Jackson's smile held no warmth. Then you die here. Maybe you take me with you, maybe you don't. But either way, you don't leave this diner alive. 7 guns on you right now, Wraith. CIA training is impressive, but math is math. The standoff held for 10 seconds that felt like hours. Wraith's hand remained near his bag. Jackson's remained visible on the table. Everyone in the diner suspended in moment that could detonate into violence with single wrong movement. Then Wraith laughed, genuine amusement breaking tension. You actually set up ambush. Used yourself as bait. Calculated I'd take it and walked into prepared battle space. He shook his head. That's either bravery or stupidity. Haven't decided which. Can be both. Jackson's voice remained steady. But outcome's the same. You walk away or you die. Choose now. Wraith's companion whispered urgently, words inaudible but tones suggesting strong preference for retreat. The assassin raised hand, silencing him, eyes never leaving Jackson's face. If Castellano's in custody, contracts terminated per standard terms. I don't work for clients who can't pay. Wraith stepped backward toward the door, movements careful and non-threatening. But understand something, Morrison. You won this round through intelligence and preparation. Respect that. But if circumstances change, if someone else hires me for similar work, we'll meet again under different conditions. Looking forward to it. Wraith and his companion exited, footsteps receding down sidewalk. Cole's voice crackled through earpiece. They're heading back to SUV. Want us to intercept? Negative, let them go. Jackson released breath he'd been holding, feeling adrenaline crash begin. Sullivan, you get all that on recording? The detective stood, moving to Jackson's booth with equipment bag. Every word. Wraith just admitted he was hired for contract killing. Combined with Castellano's arrest, this nails down conspiracy charges. DA's going to have field day. Rosa emerged from kitchen, razor behind her with rifle that had been tracking Wraith through wall. That was either the smartest or dumbest thing I've ever witnessed. Haven't decided which. Wraith said the same thing. Jackson's hands trembled slightly, delayed stress response he couldn't quite control. Is it really over? Sullivan pulled out phone, checked messages, nodded. Castellano was arraigned 2 hours ago. Judge denied bail based on flight risk and severity of charges. DA's offering 20 years if he pleads, 35 to life if it goes to trial. Man's done. The reality settled slowly, disbelief fighting acceptance. Threat that had consumed the last week, that had transformed Jackson's life and brought Emma and Maya into it, was actually resolved. No more assassins, no more surveillance, no more fear that every sound might be prelude to violence. Jackson's phone rang, Emma's name on screen. He answered with voice that nearly broke. It's over. Wraith walked away. Castellanos in custody, you and Maya are safe. Silence on the other end, then sound that might have been sob or laugh or combination. You're okay? You're not hurt? Not a scratch. Coming home now. Tell Maya I'll be there for bedtime story. She's going to be so happy. We both are. Emma paused. Thank you, Jackson, for keeping your promise, for coming back. Always. He hung up, stood on legs that felt unsteady, accepted Rosa's fierce hug and Razor's respectful nod, and Sullivan's handshake that conveyed more than words could. The ride back to Canyon Crest took Jackson through streets that looked different despite being unchanged. Riverside transformed by relief from burden he'd carried so long, he'd forgotten what lightness felt like. Sunset painted California sky in oranges and purples. Beauty that Jackson actually registered instead of viewing as mere transition between danger periods. Maya met him at the door before he could knock, Emma right behind her, both females throwing arms around him with abandon that suggested they'd been rehearsing reunion. Jackson held them, feeling tears he couldn't stop and didn't try to hide, grief and relief and gratitude mixing into emotion too large for categories. You came back, Maya's voice held triumph. I knew you would. Told you, Marines keep promises. They ate dinner that Rosa had delivered earlier, lasagna and garlic bread and salad that tasted better than anything Jackson remembered. Maya chattered about her day with the intensity of someone who'd been worried but wouldn't admit it, filling silence with noise that pushed away darkness. Emma watched Jackson with expression he couldn't quite read, something between gratitude and possibility, Awareness that they'd survived crisis and now faced question of what came next. After dinner, Maya demanded bedtime story with the authority of small tyrants everywhere. Jackson read about brave knights and rescued princesses. Voice steady despite exhaustion that reached bone deep. Maya fell asleep mid-chapter, face peaceful in way that suggested nightmares might finally release their grip. Emma waited in the living room with 2 beers, domestic bottles sweating condensation in evening heat. Figured you'd need something stronger than water. Jackson accepted gratefully, drank half the bottle in single pull. That was longest 6 hours of my life. Mine too. Every minute you were gone, I kept thinking about what I'd tell Maya if you didn't come back. How I'd explain that another man she cared about had left. Emma's voice carried weight of every abandonment she'd survived. I'm glad I didn't have to. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking beer and processing day that had nearly ended in tragedy, but instead delivered resolution. Outside, Marcus maintained watch from his car. Unnecessary now, but routine providing comfort. Inside, Maya slept safe and unaware of how close she'd come to losing another father figure. Emma broke silence eventually. Sullivan called while you were reading to Maya, said Castellano's lawyers approached the DA about plea deal. 25 years, no parole. He'll die in prison. Good. Jackson felt no sympathy for man who'd hired assassins to kill a child. What about Derek Kane? Witness protection in exchange for testimony. He'll disappear into new identity somewhere far from California. And Wraith? Ghost confirmed he left Riverside. Sullivan's forwarding information to FBI, but without Castellano bankrolling legal defense, Wraith's probably not worth pursuing. Too many resources for low probability of conviction. Jackson nodded, accepting that justice came in imperfect forms. The important people were safe. The immediate threat was eliminated. Larger questions about morality and vengeance could wait for another day. Emma set down her beer, shifted to face Jackson directly. So what happens now? With us, I mean. With this. She gestured at the house, the situation, the makeshift family they'd constructed from crisis and proximity. Jackson had been avoiding this question. Superstition, suggesting that planning for future invited its cancellation. But Emma deserved answer, deserved to know whether the protection and support would evaporate now that danger had passed. Club voted yesterday, before the race situation. They're deeding this house to you. Full ownership, no rent, no strings. It's yours for as long as you want it. Emma's eyes widened. Jackson, I can't accept. Already done. Papers were filed this morning. House is in your name. He held up hand, stopping protest. Before you argue, understand that Club owns 12 properties across Riverside. This one was sitting empty, depreciating. Having someone who'll maintain it, improve it, make it home, that's benefit to us. Plus the tax deduction. Tax deduction. Emma's laugh carried disbelief. You're giving me a house and claiming tax benefits as motivation. I'm giving Maya a stable home because she saved our lives and deserves better than eviction notices and uncertainty. You're welcome to come along for the ride. Emma's expression shifted through emotions too quick to catalog, landing somewhere between gratitude and something deeper that Jackson didn't want to name because naming made it real and real made it vulnerable to loss. What about you? Where do you fit in this arrangement? Jackson hadn't prepared for directness. He'd assumed Emma would accept house and they'd maintain friendly distance, occasional dinners, and Maya's honorary uncle role, connection without complication. But her question suggested she was asking for more, offering more, opening door to possibilities that terrified and tempted simultaneously. I fit wherever you want me to fit. I can be Maya's Papa Bear who visits for bedtime stories and birthday parties. Or I can be more present, more involved, more family than friend. He paused, gathering courage that felt harder to summon than facing Wraith. What I can't be is absent. Not anymore. You and Maya, you reminded me that life continues after loss. That family can be rebuilt from unexpected materials. I don't want to lose that. Emma moved closer, closing distance between them on the couch, hand finding his with deliberate intent. My father died when I was 21. My husband abandoned us when Maya was 3. Every man I've depended on has left, voluntarily or otherwise. So when I say I need you to stay, understand that's asking for something I've learned not to expect. I'll stay. The words felt like vow, commitment that carried weight beyond casual promise. However this looks, whatever form it takes, I'll be here. For Maya, for you, for as long as you'll have me. Emma's kiss came without warning, lips meeting his with intensity that spoke of relief and desire, and gratitude mixed into something that tasted like hope. Jackson responded with surprise that melted into acceptance, hands finding her waist and pulling her closer, 20 years of emotional isolation cracking under warmth of human connection. They broke apart breathless, Emma's forehead resting against his, both of them processing what had just shifted between them. That was unexpected. Good unexpected or bad unexpected? Emma's voice held vulnerability that made Jackson's chest ache. Good, terrifying, but good. He pulled back enough to see her face. I'm 62 years old, Emma. I've got gray in my beard and scars on my soul and baggage that would sink cargo ship. You're 28 with whole life ahead of you. You sure you want complicated when you could have simple? Simple left me broke and alone with a daughter to raise. Complicated saved our lives and gave us home. I'll take complicated. Emma's smile carried certainty that Jackson desperately wanted to believe. Besides, age is just number. You've got more life in you than men half your years. More honor, more courage, more capacity for showing up when it matters. They kissed again, slower this time, exploration rather than explosion, learning contours and responses with patience that suggested this was beginning rather than isolated moment. When they finally separated, Jackson felt lighter than he had in decades. Burden of loneliness lifting to reveal possibility he'd thought died with Jennifer. We should probably talk about logistics. Emma's practical side reasserted itself. What this means for living arrangements, for Maya's understanding, for club dynamics. Tomorrow, tonight, let's just exist in moment without analyzing it to death. Jackson stood, offering hand that Emma accepted. Walk me out? They moved to the front door where Marcus waited by his bike, tactfully pretending not to notice emotional tableau playing out. Jackson hugged Emma goodbye, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, breathing in scent that would now be associated with homecoming. See you tomorrow? Count on it. Emma released him reluctantly. Thank you, Jackson, for everything. Thank you for letting me be part of your lives, for giving me reason to care about tomorrow. The ride home took Jackson through Riverside night that felt transformed, same streets, but different significance. City that now held people worth protecting and future worth fighting for. His house when he arrived felt less like sanctuary and more like way station, place to sleep before returning to where life actually happened. Inside, he moved through routine that had sustained him through 20 years of solitary existence, knowing it would soon change. That routines would expand to include another person, another child, family constructed from choice rather than biology. The photograph of Jennifer and Tommy still sat on his dresser, but looking at it no longer brought crushing grief. Instead, Jackson felt permission, sensed that they would approve of him finding happiness after decades of mourning. I met someone, he told their frozen smiles. Woman named Emma, daughter named Maya. They're not replacing you, but they're giving me reason to keep living instead of just existing. Hope that's okay. No answer came, but Jackson felt peace settle over him, acceptance that loving new people didn't betray old loves. That heart had capacity to expand rather than divide. He set the photograph down gently, turned off the light, lay in bed staring at ceiling with mind too active for sleep. His phone buzzed, text from Emma. Maya woke up asking if you were okay. I told her you were home safe. She said to tell you she loves you. Jackson's vision blurred. He typed back with fingers that trembled. Tell her I love her too, and that I'll see her tomorrow. She'll be happy. So will I. Sleep well, Papa Bear. Jackson set down the phone and closed his eyes, feeling exhaustion finally override adrenaline, muscles relaxing into mattress with relief that came from survival and possibility both. Tomorrow would bring challenges, adjustments, negotiations about what their unconventional family would look like. But tonight he could rest in knowledge that he'd kept his promise, that Maya and Emma were safe, that he'd found purpose worth the risk of caring again. Sleep came easy for the first time in 20 years. 6 months passed in rhythm that felt simultaneously swift and eternal, time marked by Maya's growth and Emma's increasing comfort and Jackson's gradual integration into domestic life he'd thought permanently lost. The safe house became simply home, Canyon Crest address associated with laughter and morning chaos, and bedtime rituals that grounded days in routine. Jackson had relinquished club presidency to Cole, transitioning to advisor role that kept him connected without demanding constant attention. The Angels Riders Brotherhood Community Center opened in March, built on property Castellano had coveted. Transformation of battleground into sanctuary that served troubled youth and veterans struggling with re-entry. Emma directed operations with efficiency that surprised no one who knew her, turning organizational skills honed through survival into professional expertise. Maya thrived with stability, kindergarten teacher commenting on improved focus and decreased anxiety, child blossoming under consistent care that included two parents, honorary uncles who taught her about motorcycles and honor, and Rosa who'd claimed grandmother role with typical steamroller determination. Jackson and Emma's relationship evolved naturally, moving from crisis bonding to genuine partnership, romance developing alongside friendship as they navigated merged lives. They married quietly in April, small ceremony at the community center attended by angels, riders, and the makeshift family they'd assembled. Maya served as flower girl with seriousness that suggested state occasion, distributing petals with precision while wearing dress Rosa had sewn specifically for the event. Ghost attended, standing beside Jackson during vows in symbolic unity that marked permanent peace between rival clubs. Sullivan served as witness, retirement from police force allowing him to participate without conflict of interest. The ceremony was brief, vows simple, commitment profound. "I promise to show up," Jackson said when it was his turn. "Every day, for every struggle, for every key. I promise to be present, not just physically, but emotionally. I promise to love you and Maya with everything I have left to give." Emma's vows matched his directness. "I promise to trust you when trust feels impossible. I promise to build family with you that honors those we've lost while celebrating those we've found. I promise to remind you that staying is heroism equal to any battle fought." They kissed to applause and wolf whistles from assembled bikers, Maya cheering loudest from her position, holding rings, celebration erupting into party that lasted through sunset and beyond. Jackson danced with his new wife, with his daughter, with Rosa who cried openly while maintaining that something was just in her eye. Late in the evening, as party wound down and cleanup commenced, Ghost pulled Jackson aside for a private conversation. "You did good, brother. Built something worth having from situation that could have ended in bloodshed." "We did good. Your intelligence on Wraith made difference between success and tragedy." Ghost nodded acknowledgement. "Heard from old contact yesterday. Castellano died in prison. Heart attack during yard time. Probably actually heart attack, but also possibly not. Prisoners have ways of handling child predators that look natural." Jackson absorbed this information without emotional response. Castellano's death brought no satisfaction, just closure. Final period on chapter that had threatened everything Jackson now treasured. His father can rest. Maybe, or maybe his father's ashamed of what his son became. Either way, it's done. Ghost extended hand. "Semper Fi, Jackson. You earned this happiness. Enjoy it." They shook, two old warriors acknowledging that some battles ended not with victory, but with survival that enabled rebuilding. Ghost departed as ceremony concluded, leaving Jackson standing in community center that represented transformation from violence to healing, watching Emma laugh with Rosa while Maya dozed in chair decorated with flowers. This was legacy, Jackson realized, not kill counts or club territory or reputation built on intimidation. This building full of hope, this family constructed from strangers, this little girl who would grow up knowing that men could be counted on. This was what Tommy's death in 20 years of grief had been teaching him toward. Lesson that took decades to learn, but was worth every painful step. Emma appeared at his elbow, slipping hand into his with familiarity that still brought wonder. "What are you thinking about?" about how lucky I am, how close I came to missing this because I was too focused on dying to notice life offering second chance. Good thing Maya dragged you back from that edge. Emma leaned against his shoulder. She saved your life as much as you saved hers. More, probably. Jackson watched their daughter sleep, face peaceful in a way that suggested nightmares had finally released their grip completely. What should we tell her about how we met, about Castellano, about everything that brought us together? The truth, eventually, that brave acts have consequences, that family comes in unexpected forms, that the scariest-looking people sometimes have the biggest hearts. Emma smiled. But maybe we wait until she's older. Let her be kid a little longer before explaining how complicated adults make everything. They stood together watching their community celebrate, angels and riders mixing without tension, veterans finding support, youth discovering purpose, proof that violence could transform into peace if people chose courage over fear. Maya stirred, woke with disoriented confusion that cleared when she saw her parents watching. Is the party over? Her voice carried disappointment. Just getting started, little one. Jackson lifted her, feeling her arms wrap around his neck with trust that still brought him to edge of tears. We've got whole future ahead of us. This is just the beginning. Maya yawned, settling against his shoulder with contentment that suggested she believed him, that his promises had proven reliable enough to accept without question. Can we have pancakes tomorrow? Absolutely, Rosa's special recipe. And can we work on the treehouse? Weather permitting, yes. And will you tell me stories about Grandpa David and about Tommy? Jackson's throat tightened, but he managed response. Every story I know. They'd want you to hear them. Okay, I love you, Papa Bear. The words never got old, never lost impact, each repetition precious as first time he had heard them. I love you too, Maya. More than you know. Emma joined the embrace. Three of them standing together in community center that represented hope built from ashes, family forged through crisis, future earned through sacrifice and courage. Outside, Riverside continued its eternal rhythm, city that had witnessed Jackson's lowest moments and highest redemption, streets that connected past to present to whatever came next. Jackson Morrison had entered September, expecting nothing but routine dissolution, slow fade toward death without meaning or memory worth preserving. He'd found instead reasons to live, people worth protecting, legacy worth building. The girl who saved the angels had saved him more profoundly than she could understand. 5-year-old's bravery unlocking grace Jackson thought permanently lost. Now he stood with wife and daughter in building dedicated to helping others find similar redemption, surrounded by brothers who'd become family and former enemies who'd become allies, living proof that transformation was possible if people chose it. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but no longer frightening, filled with pancake mornings and treehouse projects and stories shared across generations, ordinary moments that constituted extraordinary life. Jackson had learned through decades of pain that existence could be survived without being lived, that breathing continued long after purpose died. But Maya had taught him a different lesson, one that Emma reinforced daily through trust and love and commitment to building rather than merely enduring. Life continued after loss, not as pale imitation of what came before, but as new creation entirely, different but no less valuable. Joy earned through grief's crucible. Jackson Morrison, 62 years old, former Marine, Hells Angels president, broken man who'd been reassembled by unlikely family, stood at beginning of chapter he'd thought permanently closed. And for first time in 20 years, he couldn't wait to see how the story continued. The girl who saved the bikers had saved them all. Now they would spend the rest of their days proving worthy of the gift.